Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us here on News Gang, and we're looking forward to your feedback, and we'll be sharing that in a moment. But like we said, this is all about the running mates, and this week the two big formations announced their running mate candidates. We've had a chat about Raila and his pick of Karua, and now it was on Sunday, I believe, when Deputy President William Ruto, who's the party leader of UDA, made his pick finally, and that is picking Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, and we'll be getting to his acceptance speech in a moment, and just to hear what that was like. But just very quickly, Jamila, talk to us about this pick and you know,
this pick,
your thoughts on this pick.
We were saying this on Saturday when we were waiting for the announcement. There had been early indications from Friday evening. Kashuri will confirm that the running mate would be named at 10 in the morning on Saturday. I remember we mobilized our teams and all that, and then 10 became 12, 12 became 2, 2 became 5, 5 became 8.
17 hours
17 hours at 1 a.m. The head of communications for the campaign, Hussein Mohammed, came out and said, well, we'll announce it tomorrow. And then, of course, the next day, after 17 hours, the announcement was made. And we were saying that before that, the Kenya Kwanza running mate process had been almost silent. It had no drama compared to now what was happening in the Azimio side, because they had, remember, the interviews. We had about 11 of them. We had 7 Kwanza, then 11. Then we had a shortlisted list of 3. Then we were waiting the principal to announce which of the 3 he would pick. So it had been silent in the Kenya Kwanza side before the 17-hour wait. And then there were all this conversations going about, because we had there was Professor Kithure Kindiki and Rigathi Gachagua who were left after the initial list, which included, among others, Governor Anne Waiguru, the Member of Parliament for Kandara, Alice Wahome, among others. Even Ndindi Nyoro, I think, was there also, Gachuri. And then ultimately we had these 2. And then we had all the intrigues afterwards with most of the members of Parliament in Kenya Kwanza supporting Kithure Kindiki. But ultimately, William Ruto decided on Rigathi Gachagua. And I think for him, he felt this was the person who, for me, would be my running mate. One, he represents that all-important Mount Kenya vote, almost 6 million of those. And Rigathi Gachagua is known as a mobilizer. Ni mtu wa watu, mtu wa ground, anaelewa watu. And even though Kenya Kwanza seems to have gained a lot of ground in central Kenya, with the deputy president enjoying a lot of support, I think ile uko naye mkononi, nataka kuhakikisha kwamba imesalia mkononi, haikuponyoki. Because if you had picked, let's say, someone else, what would you have told the people of Mount Kenya? Yeah, nimechagua mtu mwingine kwa sababu. That's why I think for him, he looked at the numbers that Rigathi Gachagua was bringing, the fact that he's someone who has been, I think, loyal to the deputy president from the beginning, and someone who is a fighter. I think that's, we can give Rigathi Gachagua that. And for the deputy president, I think he looks at it like someone huyu atanizolea kura zote, niko nazo ndio support, lakini someone who will stand by me and make sure that the votes, that the support that we have in central Kenya, I think inabakia. The 17-hour debacle notwithstanding, hata tushasahau.
Yeah,
tushasahau.
Yeah,
now it's Ruto, Rigathi as a ticket.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing that you mentioned. Talk to us about the relationship between Ruto and Rigathi. Rigathi has stood by the deputy president from the word go. I mean, I think, you know, even with the fallout from Jubilee Party and the breakaway into UDA, so definitely somebody who's been loyal, but he certainly brings much more to this ticket, right? Absolutely, and
I'm one of those people who are not convinced whatsoever that even the 17 hours was about looking for a running mate. It was just taking people through the motions. I mean, the choice was already...
So similar to the interviews that we saw on the other end?
The choice was already made. I mean, it was pretty obvious. And how you would know it was a pretty obvious choice, why was Rigathi armed with a speech on Saturday morning when he was going to Karen? I mean, a speech you prepare once you're sure of what is likely the outcome. So I'm one of those convinced that there was no luck, there was no coincidence, it was a clear ticket.
Clear from the word go.
From the onset.
So what of those opinion polls and the scientific polling and everything, but could you just hold that thought for just a moment? I want us to listen to Rigathi Gachagua, who is now the deputy presidential candidate for the Kenya Kwanza ticket.
I cannot wait to work on the guaranteed minimum return for our farmers. Tea, milk, coffee, miraa, rice, maize, cotton, cashew nuts, among other horticultural produces. Others must now become the chicken that lay the golden eggs.
Linus.
Look, Deputy President William Ruto makes his decisions. He makes his decisions, and there is a big difference between how nominations for running mate were done in Azimio and how they were done in Kenya Kwanza. In Kenya Kwanza, and I want to agree with you, Francis, the DP knew all along who he wanted to be his running mate.
It was a clear choice.
It was clear. And here is the motivation in my view. Remember, William Ruto has run a very long campaign that started way back in the days of Tangatanga versus Kieleweke in central Kenya. That is number one. Number two, the scene or the setting has always been central Kenya. That is where the battle has been going on. And do not forget that in came another player, and that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, who went really hammer and tongs for his deputy. You remember the Sagana speech, the Sagana meetings, and the president's repeated pushbacks on saying that his deputy is not the best person to succeed him. In Rigathi Gachagua, my view is Deputy President William Ruto was investing in a warrior, a regional warrior, to continue giving him a fighting advantage in central Kenya. And I also want to bring in something else that definitely mattered. Kindiki Kudure comes from Tharaka Nithi, and Rigathi Gachagua comes from Nyeri. There was that the east and west Mount Kenya sort of divide. When you look at the numbers, about 4 million votes come from the western side, and about 1-point-something million votes come from the eastern side. It's a clear choice when it comes to where you should invest your energy in. You go for the bulk of numbers. But he spoke yesterday again and let the cat out in terms of what he was looking for. And I just want us to listen to DP Ruto when he spoke at the burial of Rigathi Gachagua in the home of in the home county of Nyeri. Let's listen to Ruto on why he picked Rigathi. There you have it. Okay, I don't think we seem not to have that clip, but if I could just
paraphrase it.
Yeah, paraphrase it. The deputy president said he was looking for a strong person, and in Rigathi Gachagua he got a strong person. What does this tell you? He is looking for a person who will fight for him and with him during this battle, not later. So if you're thinking of Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, he's thinking of my running mate that will help me in the battles, current battles in especially Mount Kenya. Because now there's a duality of a front that is facing there. One is the president, his boss, with whom he's estranged, and two is Raila Odinga and Martha Karua. These are the people now who are going in there to try and get the vote and basically try and gain advantage as well in a region that has been dominant. So I think that is what he was looking for. You could see and you can say that in Rigathi Gachagua, the DP also gets a soulmate, someone they are very similar with in terms of how they do their politics. Both are hard driving personalities, straight shooters, and they can be very forceful in their ways. And this is really, in terms of the chemistry, this is a ticket.
Absolutely, and absolutely, Linus. You see, one of the, you may call it an advantage or a disadvantage that has been made sentiments that have been made about this ticket is the abrasiveness. But here is a ticket that I would call a pushback ticket. One of the driving forces, especially in the Mount Kenya region, is the ability to take on President Uhuru Kenyatta directly. And one of the people who have really pushed back at President Uhuru Kenyatta is Rigathi Gachagua.
Yeah.
And the question of President Uhuru Kenyatta's influence in determining his successor, particularly in the Mount Kenya region, has been one of the issues that have been raised in the political scene insofar as this election is concerned. And you even remember during the Sagana meetings, one of the people who were telling or even daring the president to come to the mountain is Rigathi. I mean, you remember during that rally in Mwea, just a week before President Uhuru Kenyatta went to Sagana, one of the people who were telling the president, "Where come? You come. We are waiting for you, and when you come, deal with these matters," is Rigathi Gachagua. So I would say it's a pushback ticket, and one of the driving forces has also been to rebel against the president. And one of the persons who have openly rebelled against the president, other than the other members of parliament who support the deputy president, principally has been Rigathi Gachagua. So he comes with his own advantages in terms of that mobilization, that pushback, that rebellion insofar as the status quo is concerned, and insofar as President Uhuru Kenyatta's attempt to influence his successor is concerned. But at the same time, that pushback comes also with some disadvantage. I mean, there's a disadvantage of history. There's a disadvantage of perception. There's also a disadvantage of the corruption question. So those are 3 or 4 disadvantages that outrightly Rigathi Gachagua and the deputy president have to contend with, even as they look at the advantages that Rigathi may bring in terms of mobilization. But more fundamentally is the optics of it. Look at the excitement that was created with the nomination of Martha Karua as Raila's running mate, vis-a-vis the immediate defense of the ticket of Rigathi Gachagua and William Ruto. So those are aspects that you must look at critically insofar as how the race shapes up.
Indeed, and when you focus on what happened in Kenya Kwanza for a moment, I know we said, there was a lot more, at least publicly anyway, jostling over the Azimio ticket, but didn't quite see the same until, I guess, those 17 hours where I think, it's been said around the table that was probably taking people through the motions. But then there was, Senator Kithure Kindiki, who, was seen to be the front runner. And now we understand, opinion polls were used, not just nationally, but internally as well. And he, seemed to rise to the top. But I want us to listen to, and I hope we have this Ruto paying tribute to Kindiki, and then we can come back and talk about, Kindiki a little bit more, and, how Kenya Kwanza now moves forward as well.
Before I come to our candidate, I want to very sincerely thank my lawyer, my friend, Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki, who came very far and became the runner-up in this contest. Again, a forthright Kenyan, a Kenyan of great standing, a lawyer par excellence, our former Deputy Speaker of the Senate, and the man who defeated that fellow called Ocampo, the current senator of Tharaka Nithi County, who is not here with us now.
Yeah, so in as much as the decision here was made, there was also, a little bit of managing that fallout, Linus. And even as you come in to comment, I'm just taking a look at the TIFA poll that was done, right after that. And it's one of the things that was said in their concluding comments. It said that however popular any candidate may have been amongst the general public or even the party or coalition faithful, and I suppose they were referring to, what we saw happening in Kenya Kwanza, they say the ultimate decision remains with the presidential candidate, a decision that is clearly based on a variety of factors. And some of those factors apparently did not favor Kindiki.
Absolutely. The ultimate decision lies with the presidential aspirant stroke candidate. That is the person that decides that this is how my ticket ought to be. And this is what came to basically affect Kithure Kindiki, because there were so many other factors to be weighed, and those factors gave Rigathi Gachagua an upper hand. In a running mate, by the way, you look for a political soulmate. You look for somebody who closest to your ideas. And I think that is what the deputy president was going through, and that is what he considered in picking Rigathi Gachagua, with whom they share a lot. We've read stories now about how back in the days in the university they were together, and they both had beginnings in the hands or places of KANU bigwigs. Rigathi Gachagua with the late Davidson Gibuini Kuguru in Nyeri, and William Ruto in President Daniel Arap Moi, Youth for KANU 92. Going to work for KANU and for, I think it was Dr. Julia Ojambo those days. So they have these shared beginnings. So in a ticket, you would look for that. And I want to give an illustration which I cannot go beyond a sentence. Jimmy Wanjigi picked his lawyer for running mate.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And
right.
I don't know whether it's verifiable. Somebody picked their wife as running mate.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what you'll say about Wajakoya. Anyway, I digress.
And this is not what we mean by going closest. There are other factors, of course, that you have to have a national ticket. And just finally on Rigathi Gachagua, the DP seemed to throw everything into Central Kenya, because Rigathi Gachagua doesn't have a national profile. We have to say that. He got to Kilgoris and people where I come from, and people say that's Rigathi Gachagua. He has to do the introduction that I am Rigathi Gachagua. And some of the factors sometimes politicians consider in picking running mates is a national profile, where you can be able to send a candidate to other places outside their home region, and they'll resonate. I think one of the things, just to add on to those that Francis illustrated, that the Kenya Kwanza team has to work on is Rigathi as a running mate outside Mount Kenya region.
And I think before we get to that, you said the presidential candidate names the running mate, and you gave those examples. It's resonating in my mind. But Professor Kithure Kindiki, Gachuri, despite you saying that the 17 hours was just taking us through the motions, there was hope in him that he would be picked. The same way there was hope in the minds of the people of Tharaka, Nithi, who after he was not picked, we're talking about how Deputy President William Ruto went there and said, nipatieni kijana wenu asiran. So he had declared interest in running for governor of Tharaka Nithi, and the deputy president went there for a rally and said munipatie huyu na wananchi wakisema tumekupa kwa nini haujamchagua. Of course the same sentiments of not being happy were felt in Sekuru in Mwingi, where Kalonzo Musyoka comes from, when he was not picked. But there was hope in Professor Kithure Kindiki that he would be picked. I mean, when we look at him, we see that lawyer who fought for the deputy president at the ICC in The Hague. Shurian, you and I covered it. In his arguments in the court, he speaks intellectually. He's a lawyer. He's a professor. He's even the one who's been authoring all the legal documents, including the Kenya Kwanza agreement that you actually will unleash for public.
What are you saying? What are you saying, Jamila?
And he was interviewed by Waihiga Maura on Tuesday, and really he spoke about you could clearly see his loyalty to the deputy president and the fact that he said, well, sikuchaguliwa, but we move on swiftly, I'll still work with him. Yes, he says he can't run for any elective post because he's time barred. He says he's not ready for any appointive position. For me, that comes across as someone pengine, maybe I'm just thinking in my head that was hurt to some extent, expected something but didn't get it, but now what can he do? Because you look at all those dynamics. Tunasema Tharaka Nithi is a small county. You can't compare the votes that come from there compared to, for instance, where Rigathi Gachagua comes from. And that is one of the factors that was looked at. And the fact that Kindiki comes across as more intellectual, and I don't want to use the word refined, but I will, but he doesn't come across as Rigathi Gachagua, who's a fighter, who will go down to the ground and talk to people at their level. And maybe that is one of the things that may have pushed the deputy president to pick him. But I think in the eyes of people who look at him, they keep thinking maybe it's a waste in terms of someone who could have maybe added maybe something to the ticket. But either way, this is the reasons behind why William Ruto picked Rigathi Gachagua. He knows them best, and why he did not pick Kithure Kindiki as his running mate.
Yeah, see, Yvonne, Jamila has used two words: hope, expectations. Those are not factors when picking a running mate. Those are not factors when picking a running mate. And even if they were to be, they will be very far away in the pecking order in terms of arriving at a running mate. And I'll still go back to my earlier statement that the choice of Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua as running mate of Deputy President William Ruto was made way long ago. I don't know this, but looking at certain things that happened in the run-up to this decision, they start to make sense. Look at even subtle things like seating arrangement during functions. You remember the UDA National Delegates Convention at Kasarani Gymnasium? Go back to the photos and you will see the seating arrangement. Some of those telltale signs would give you an idea of some of these things. But more fundamentally, I would think all those who were promised the position of running mate were just being taken through the motions, so that eventually it seems like there was a consultative and an acceptance ultimately on the choice that was made. I look at it from that point of view. But secondly, what triggered, or what was the principal determinant was: 1, numbers; 2, mobilization; 3, resources. Those are the 3 factors that I would think gave Rigathi an upper hand, more than, let's say, Kindiki, more than the other aspirants who are vying for the position. In terms of numbers, voters' numbers, I would say Rigathi would mobilize that. But when you look at the finesse, the workhorse in the preparation for the coalition, give it to Professor Kindiki. I mean, he's the person behind the coalition agreements. He's the person who was actually managing the nominations of the UDA party. If you remember, when the UDA election board was making announcements, you would see Professor Kindiki there. So he was doing the tidying up, basically, for the nomination process. You know, try to resolve the issues that came with it. So in terms of knitting the bits and pieces in the party and in the coalition, that is largely the function of Professor Kindiki. But on the other hand, the other work is left for Rigathi and the other team members. But there's also a disadvantage that Rigathi had for himself, and probably something that, if he was to really succeed in this, he would need to work on. When members of parliament from the Mount Kenya region, 31 of them were asked to vote, 22 voted for Kindiki. Only 5 voted for Rigathi. 2 voted for Anne Waiguru. 1 voted for Justin Muturi. 1 voted for Musalia Mudavadi, but it was declared a rejected vote because he's not from there. He was not on the list, and he's not from the mountain. Speaking to a few of them, they were telling me that they were not sure about Rigathi because of his abrasiveness, his hardline stances on certain things. And so they thought Kindiki was better, a nice guy, and so on and so forth. And that's why we are saying, when you look at the formal reasons, the formal parameters, Kindiki scored highly. But the informal parameters that actually, I would say, were bigger, stronger, more influential in the choice of a running mate, that's where Rigathi scored.
Okay, ladies, gentlemen, I want us to focus on another aspect, probably within Azimio, but that has stood out this week, and that is of Kalonzo Musyoka. Will he, won't he? Is he in, is he out? Which way does it go? Can we listen to the declaration that he made on the very same day, at probably the very same moment, that Martha Karua was being named, running mate, and apparently where he was also being, assigned a particular role in the Azimio lineup. So let's listen to Kalonzo's declaration.
My brother Raila knows I'm naming my running mate. In fact, from Mombasa, he came home to try to convince me to accept his choice of our sister, Martha Karua. We did not agree, and I said, let's sleep over it. We slept over it, and last night we are at it. We did not again agree, so this is why we agreed that he will name Martha, and I will name my running mate today. My name, as we speak, is before the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission as a presidential candidate for Wiper Democratic Movement.
Jamila.
Yes. Kisheria kuna maswali yataibuka hapo.
Yeah.
We've talked about, it was a story that was done today by Seth.
Yeah.
But for me, Kalonzo's behavior is not about politics of issues. It's about numbers, which he knows he has. Kalonzo Musyoka understands his value. 1.6, 1.7 million votes in Ukambani. He's the undisputed, in my opinion, kingpin in Ukambani, na anajua kura zake ni muhimu. Not just in Azimio, even for Kenya Kwanza, they'd be happy if they had him. That's why I think even their campaigns, they keep saying, ame sumbuliwa, ame tapeliwa, ame. Kalonzo Musyoka understands his value. And because of that, he wants whatever promises are being made for him. Because remember when Raila Odinga named Martha Karua as his running mate, he named a mini cabinet of sorts.
Yeah.
And Kalonzo Musyoka was like the chief cabinet secretary, chief minister. And I think for him, he wants that written down somewhere and signed and deposited with a legal entity. Because in this country, promises in the past have been broken. Agreements have been broken, and I think for him, he wants it written na ikue kwamba kitu ambacho kitakuwa implemented, because even when you start a business, Yvonne, if you don't deal with the nitty-gritty before, things may change baadaye. Once people are elected into power and you have a government, things may change. Unaweza kurukwa. It's a possibility, and I think history has shown us that kuna watu wamerukwa. Pre-election agreements are not binding sometimes. So I think for Kalonzo, is looking out for his interests. Yes, he didn't get, remember he wanted to run for president, akaambiwa wacha, akawacha. He wanted the running mate position, ajapewa hiyo. And he believes he's a seasoned politician, and he is. Yeah. He's been the vice president he was vice president for what, 4 years or so. And he believes he anatosha kuwa rais. Okay, so hamkumpa rais, hamkumpa running mate. You're promising him the chief cabinet secretary position. Have it written down so that he's sure wakishinda hicho kiti ni chake. I don't blame him, honestly, for having a stand, for insisting on this.
So knowing his value is that what this is? That he understands it and he knows exactly what he wants to do, and is pushing this down to the very last moment. And perhaps is he a master negotiator, or is he, what did Taifa Leo call him, Bwana Masumbuko? Which is it?
Well, there was that headline by Taifa Leo, Bwana Masumbuko. It's very difficult to watch Kalonzo Musyoka and his political movements. It's actually head spinning. Although as a person from Transmara, Kilgoris, I should be saying something else, because he got Kilgoris to the ticket through Andrew Sunkuli. But this was just part of politics that are really complex about Kalonzo Musyoka. I don't know about his value. And I don't know what his end game is. Because what he has done is to do an all or nothing demand that he should be running mate. Is this politically pragmatic? I think he's looking at things from his own perspective. He's not looking at the larger picture. And the larger picture is, first of all, there was the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga.
Yeah.
Jubilee and ODM are on board. Something has changed. There are new players in the coalition. You're talking about 25 parties. But you can't just lock it and say, it's an all or nothing, give me or I walk, kind of approach. And it's really, I totally lack words to describe what we are witnessing with Kalonzo Musyoka. All I know is this is completely unfair for the Ukambani region, because he doesn't stand a chance of, say, overtaking Raila Odinga and William Ruto in the presidential race, even if he goes to run as an independent or a Wiper candidate. It's a very late entry to the race, so late that it might not make an impact. But here is the impact. If this is what he's seeking, then he can play for it, which is force the election into a second round. Force it into a second round and maybe negotiate further. But this is vintage Kalonzo Musyoka. On the 13th of October 2002, Kalonzo Musyoka was the last person to leave the Moi cabinet among those that had rebelled and gone to LDP, which then became a partner with NK to form the National Rainbow Coalition. I think I've told you the story, and I was speaking to the late Honorable Ntimama on phone. He was at the Serena, which was the base, and I asked him, how is it going? He said, everybody's in except there's a Maasai name for my in-laws, the Kambas, except for him. And he said, oh, amekataa kuzaa in Maasai. And Kalonzo Musyoka was the last person to leave KANU to the National Rainbow Coalition. Now, you look at 2007, after working with Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, and others in the no campaign of the 2005 referendum, he switched and left with a party called ODM Kenya, and actually left the whole team in limbo, because the whole group was actually used to be ODM Kenya. Yeah. So they had to find a way of obtaining ODM.
It took Mugambi Manyara to salvage Raila Odinga's ship.
Yes. Otherwise, there would have been no ODM. The ODM that is known today is actually founded by Mugambi Manyara. So that was in 2007. What does Kalonzo do in 2007? In a race that had shaped itself into a two-horse race again, he decides to run. And he said, Kibaki atasimama hapa na Raila atasimama hapa na mimi nitapita katikati yao. And so this has been the mantra of his politics. But here is something that Kalonzo may never have maybe assessed. His appeal has not really grown beyond his home region. What does this do? It puts him in the same bracket as sorry for lacking a local example, but when I see what he's doing and what he's been up to, how he's conducted his politics, it reminds me of two South African politicians. One is Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi of the Zulu, and the other one was called President Lucas Mangope. Lucas Mangope was president of an independent Bantustan, and independent in quotes, during the apartheid era, called Bopu Tatswana. And Lucas Mangope was so rigid. He is everything that we are seeing today about the Wiper leader, which is the country is trying to move this way towards independence, and he's saying, no, the homeland of Bopu Tatswana cannot be independent. We cannot join South Africa. It's going to be an independent state free from South Africa. And of course, it took the use of force to force Lucas Mangope to accept that BOP, as the brief is part of South Africa. When you look at Mangasutu Buthelezi, again, he had very difficult negotiations pre-independence with pre-elections, rather, 1994 elections. The elections were held on the 27th of April 1994. And it took the intervention of a Kenyan scholar called the late Professor Washington Okumu to go and negotiate and convince Mangosuthu that, you know, shake hands with the ANC, let's have peace, let's have the elections on the 27th of April 1994. So leaders of this kind do exist, who really hold their bases, and they don't care what effect it has on their relations with others. Because if you look at the Kalonzo numbers that he keeps talking about, Kalonzo Musyoka is not promising numbers from Kisii or Western, or he's just saying Ukambani block. So this insular type of leadership is why I compare him to Lucas Mangope, why I compare him to Mangosuthu Buthelezi. These ethnic chieftains that really have, and they are powerful. In Ukambani, Kalonzo Musyoka is influential, just like Buthelezi was among the Zulu, and Lucas Mangope was among the Tswana. So these people, these politics do exist, and they can be very, very difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I want us to have, you'll have the last word because we're ready to do our final takes. But what is then, what are his options? Because he cannot run as an independent. The date of May the 2nd, you know, passed, by which independent candidates are to submit their symbols to the registrar of political parties. And in fact, the IEBC has now, you know, gazetted the symbols of all of those who are running as independents, you know, for various seats. And then there is the issue of whether he can be a candidate on a Wiper ticket, whilst Wiper is, you know, a member of a registered coalition political party. What are his options?
His options are quite limited because the assumption would be that when his party, Wiper Democratic Movement, signed up to join Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party, that he and the party understood the consequences of signing up for that coalition party. And remember, the clamor for a coalition party, or the changes to the Political Parties Act late last year and early this year, to come up with a coalition political party, he was part of it. He was supporting that process, if you remember. And so he was part of the process that was coming up with a coalition political party, notwithstanding the fact that even in the run-up to this creation of a coalition political party, there was the OCA coalition signing. You remember that event at Kempinski?
Yes.
And a day later, there was another event at KICC. We all remember how that panned out. An event that was supposed to kick off at 9 a.m. ended up starting at almost 3 p.m.
You were present.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember the anxiety therein among the various political parties. And more fundamentally, it is the question of whether he can vie as a Wiper candidate. His name is before IEBC, yes, together with that of Sunkuli Andrew. But remember, IEBC still has to clear these presidential aspirants to make them candidates and eligible to participate in the August 9th general election. Now, this is where the question will come. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party has a presidential aspirant called Raila Odinga, who was endorsed in an event attended by Kalonzo. And thereafter, during a rally in Jacaranda, he actually endorsed that candidature. Then, secondly, the question is, has Wiper formally sought to disengage from the coalition party? Not yet formally. If it had, that document would be with the Registrar of Political Parties. To the best of our knowledge, and from sources within the Registrar's office, no such notice has been filed. Has the Coalition Council, chaired by President Uhuru Kenyatta, met and considered an application or a request to release Wiper? Not yet. What does the coalition agreement signed by Wiper and other 26 political parties say? That you cannot leave the coalition party 6 months to the general election. We are actually within that period of 6 months to the general election. And 3 months after the general election. So you can imagine the kind of a dilemma that he finds himself in.
You may want to add, Francis, the conflict resolution mechanisms within the agreement.
Oh, yes.
The court will obviously ask, have you exhausted that?
And even before you get there, then there would be the political parties dispute tribunal if you are not satisfied with the internal dispute mechanisms dispute resolution mechanisms, then political parties dispute tribunal, and then the High Court, and then the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, none of which have been triggered.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a precedent. When Maendeleo Chap, led by Dr. Alfred Mutua, sought to disengage from the coalition party on claims of, one, not accessing the coalition agreement, and two, not being fully aware of what was in the coalition agreement, the tribunal chaired by Desmond Nungo told them that first go back, exhaust the available mechanisms within the party before you proceed. I would think that is the same kind of a situation that Wiper will find itself in. I sympathize more with aspirants who are vying for various elective seats on a Wiper ticket, because some of them had already branded their merchandise. I mean, T-shirts, lassos, posters, billboards. Even some had branded their vehicles with a photo of Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. So you're telling them, go back and do that. And probably you undo it and then they agree again, so you have to redo it again. So I sympathize with those aspirants, and that's why some of them are holding against hope that there will be a reunion of sorts. But more fundamentally, when he was announcing his bid, that time I'm sure he had information that Raila Odinga had already designated to him the chief minister position in the event that the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya team wins. So far, and this is from Monday, I've not heard the Wiper leader, even by way of a statement, saying, I'm not interested in that position because I'm a presidential aspirant just like you are. I haven't heard that. And secondly, there was a statement that we will consult as we move on. So how do you consult as you move on with a person who has become your competitor, your rival in the presidential seat? So those are the mixed signals that are being sent that probably point to a possible reunion. And in the event there's no possible reunion, I would think then in the grand scheme of things is probably Kalonzo trying to look for a runoff and then get a second bite of the cherry in terms of renegotiating the deal.
Indeed.
Final word time.
Final word time? Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. All right.
We start with you, Yvonne, I think.
All right. There we go.